This is Abe Friedtanzer from Awards Buzz. Very excited to be speaking with Michael Weithorn about The Best You Can. How are you, Michael?
Good. How are you?
Good. I really enjoyed this film. I'm curious if you had some qualms about whether your co-stars would have any chemistry.
Well, in an odd sense, I did. Only, or really more that they might have too much chemistry because of obviously their life, 30 years plus of familiarity. And I, uh, Kevin was the first one who we spoke to and who was interested, and he, suggested Kira, who of course, was on any short list we had of possible anyway. But my concern at the time was not about her rightness for the part or anything. It was just that, casting her with Kevin, I just didn't want they have their very, well followed Instagram presence, and they do really charming videos together, and they're a beloved, iconic Hollywood couple. I just didn't want it to be like, oh, a little extended Kevin and Kira Instagram post. I wanted the film to sort of live in its own, on its own merits. But once I spoke to Kira about it, and both of them about it, my all my concerns went away because they really are such pros and approach this absolutely as actors, not as part of a couple, but as an individual playing a particular part. And I asked them not to rehearse together, and just to keep alive whatever possible kind of sense of discovery on the set of of because they're supposed to kind of be a little bit surprised by each other in the film when they kind of start to get to know each other better. And I wanted to try to keep that as authentic and spontaneous as possible. Once we sort of got going, the concern vanished. I was thrilled to have them both. It actually
My
helped in a couple of instances. It helped that they were a married couple because I don't know if you remember, there's a moment where they come out of the elevator at the wedding, and she says, "Oh, we can't go in there. They're checking invitations." And he goes, "Come on," and yanks her. And I said, yank her as hard as you are. You can work it out between yourselves how hard, And if actors didn't know each other, it might get a little dicey, But I figured, they can take care of exactly how hard he can pull her in that moment.
Well, they did collaborate on a film, not necessarily on screen together. That was at Tribeca a few years ago called Space Oddity, which I really loved and I feel like was very underrated. So it's nice to see them back in this context. I
Yeah,
also feel like I watched Kira on The Closer, where it's, there's some humor, but it's not quite as, I wouldn't say slapstick, but like not as physical with the comedy in a really great way. And I like that she's so into that. And especially Kevin too, because I feel like you see him sometimes in sort of dreary roles and drama. And it's nice to think the two of them really do have this funny bone that they don't always exercise all the time.
it's true. Kevin obviously he had done, certain comedic roles, very well known. His first one, I guess, the Animal House and others. And Kira, I knew was funny, but she's really funny. I have to say, I came away with a deeper appreciation. I came from the sitcom world, and that's a certain kind of funny. It's a certain kind of very precise timing, and that's one thing. But in film, it's more about really, really committing to an attitude that is written as funny, but committing to it in a very unself-conscious way, and not, oh, this is where the joke is. I'm going to sort of really punch it. There's none of that. You just have to sort of be in the moment. And she's so good and so imbue the character with a humorous side that I really came away loving.
I'm not sure if Call Your Mother is available to stream anywhere, but I feel like that's also a good sort of
Yeah,
launching pad for this side of her that she doesn't always show
yeah,
quite as prominently all the time.
yeah.
Well, I also was thinking a lot of, films like Sleepless in Seattle and You've Got Mail, that
Mhm.
while they have a mystery that this film doesn't have, a lot of it is based on communication that you have two people who don't really know each other, but they get to know each other that way. And nowadays, that's something about sending messages where you can have the, mistake of sending the wrong message to the wrong person, etc. How do you work with a format like that to make sure that it's still visually engaging on screen since obviously most of us are looking down at our phones and not up at our screens?
Yeah, that's a really great question. And we were concerned about that, and a lot of that. was giving ourselves lots of options in terms of sometimes we would shoot the phone or the computer screen, but we would also shoot a wider shot, knowing that at some points we would want to maybe just put the text on screen and just break it up. But also, as you saw, there was a device that at a certain point, once they kind of crossed a certain line of familiarity, um, that became voiceover, and you didn't even have to read anything. And that was sort of intended to symbolically, it's funny with texting. We all have found this that some people, it's hard to get your meaning across, or they misinterpret, or they think they don't get if you made a joke or whatever. And then certain people, you just lock into a great rhythm. You go, oh wow, this person is really fun to text with. They get my humor, I get theirs. Where it's almost like we're having a conversation, and it's effortless. And so that was the goal, that they, to sort of kind of tap into people's familiarity at this point with the different kinds of relationships you can have over text, and show, oh, this is one of those good ones where you really just kind of get into a groove with somebody. And so to have, to take the burden off the audience at that point, to have to read a lot of words on screen.
Were there professions of particular significance for you?
Yeah, well, nothing in the film was strictly autobiographical, but I have had multiple visits to urologists for the Ashkenazi Jew middle-aged man, inevitable prostate issues, and I always thought there was something sort of comedic about the whole thing. I think the prostate is one of the most poorly designed. It almost feels like an afterthought, when they were whoever higher power was creating the male anatomy, like, oh shit, we forgot the prostate. Where do we just put it in there? There's no room. Just get it in there. Um, and so that was definitely something that inspired by my own experience. And the security guard is interesting because my wife, who when she moved in with me, I was in a small house in Santa Monica when we met, and and she was appalled at my lax security in a neighborhood where there wasn't a lot of crime, but there was some. And so she found out about this private security force of ex-cops, so much better quality training than the alarm company kind of thing. And they had this setup where you could send a text to a number that would go right to the officer on duty. You didn't have to go through dispatch, so it was more immediate kind of response. And so she had a question one night, and he texted back, and it was the same guy the next night, and they started, like, knowing each other. And I was like, that's interesting that a relationship could form that way. So that actually was also drawn on, loosely from an actual experience, and it worked well in the film.
I know that their relationship is the center, but it's also great to see Judd Hirsch and Brittany
Hmm.
O'Grady, who I feel like represent two radically different generations of talent
Yeah.
in this film. What was it like getting them? And do you feel like you sufficiently explored their stories, or there's a lot more you'd love to do with both of them if you had more time in this script?
Uh, there's always more. I mean, the first cut of the film was 2 hours and 20 minutes, and the final cut, it was an hour and 40. And it was hard. I mean, Judd had a beautiful speech at one point that I just had to cut because it just where it was in the story just kind of stopped the story, even though it was sort of on its own terms. And yes, I think that character, it would have been wonderful to be able to explore more deeply who he was, what his life was. There are only some quick passing references to it. But hopefully the most important thing is there, that his soul and, and who he was a man. And Brittany, absolutely as well. In fact, I, what it's worth, I have a lot of notes on a short film where the character of Henry, who was the research assistant, and Sammy, Brittany actually meet accidentally and have a thing going. Because when I finished shooting, I was just so in love with all of the characters, particularly the somewhat smaller roles. And I felt like, oh, it'd be great to keep being able to write them. I don't know if anything will come of it, but yes, the long-winded answer to your question is very much so. Yeah.
Judd's also playing someone considerably younger. Like he's 90 now, right?
Yeah, exactly. He was playing younger at 83. Judd is, he's not going to be at the premiere tomorrow, and the reason is that he was the star of the Herb Gardner play "I'm Not Rappaport" on Broadway, I don't know, 25 years ago with Cleavon Little. I think he won Tony, I can't remember. And so he's been very determined to get another production going, and he finally was able to mount one up in the Catskills somewhere where he lives. And so it's running right now, and there's like Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday performances for this month. So he just could, and he's is his production, so he couldn't. There's no understudy, so he couldn't leave it. But just, the point being, at 90 to do that, to be so determined and to do it and to be able to do it is so impressive. And he's just one of those, we've all met them now. There's just one of those people who get really up in age who just are totally with it, totally, still completely, functional and all that.
Absolutely. Well, speaking of awards, I know that Kira is getting an award, the Creative Coalition Spotlight Initiative Award.
Yeah.
Very exciting way to, shine a spotlight on this film as well. What can you share just about that?
Yeah, no, they've been great, very supportive of the Creative Coalition. It's sort of I'm not exactly sure how to describe the connection, but the AARP is also involved in part of the dinner, and they're on the letterhead. And yeah, I mean, listen, obviously from the most just a business standpoint, we want to be able to get the film out there and get it promoted as much as possible. And AARP has such tremendous reach and Creative Coalition. So, their support is very meaningful from that standpoint. But also, the film obviously does deal with that issue that, I'm 68 and I can probably 10 friends my own age or roughly who have parents that are still alive and that they're dealing with. And every time I have lunch or talk, they go, oh, God, my dad, I had to go over to the facility because he was upset about that. And so much of their lives is taken up with dealing with, parents in their 90s who medical science have kept alive. But in some cases, it's a good situation, but not most. And so that's become a real issue of, for people as they get up into the point in life where they themselves want to retire and just relax, have living parents to deal with. And it's very jarring. And for Kira's character, for Cynthia, you know, it's just, like radical, unexpected transitions in life are always hard. And to have her husband go from this strong, vital man who she felt, very much protected by in a certain way to someone she has to protect and take care of very abruptly. And so that, struck me as a very kind of a poignant situation to be in. And so this Creative Coalition ARP is obviously trying to bring awareness to that kind of thing in a general sense. So hopefully the film can be a talking point around that.
I know that you've been working regularly most in TV, but it's been a long time since your last feature film. Will we have to wait
Yeah.
as long for the next one?
Uh, might have to wait longer, meaning forever. I don't know. This was so tough. Making an independent film, I've made two now, and I don't know how anyone ever makes one successfully, how I did it, how anyone does it. I was at this, Tribeca had like a director's dinner last night, and it was great to get to meet some other directors who had films and who had films, and everyone's got the same story. Oh man, it's 4 or 5 years, the financing fell out, da 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 da. And it's just such a difficult thing to do. I don't know. Right now, I don't have any immediate plans to do another. But if an idea kind of takes root, I'm sure by then it's like childbirth. Like women have multiple kids because after the first, they're oh, never again. That was so horrible, and then they forget. So I'm sure I'll forget and be motivated to do it again.
Well, I wish you nothing but joy in this stage of this film and
Thanks,
lots of
Abe.
luck with the premiere and whatever's next for the film.
I appreciate that so much, Abe. Thank you for your
Thank you.
interest.